Scarred by violence, lawmakers plan for possible mass casualty event. Now, what does this mean? Congress must ensure it can continue to govern in the aftermath of mass violence, a bipartisan group of House members argues. Scarred, I wonder. With the news that we will be deploying the United States troops to the Middle East, where we already have some 40,000, I believe about 250,000 U.S. troops are outside the United States right now. Escalation in Eastern Europe with the Ukrainian invasion of Russia. And this report that comes out that Iran was plotting to assassinate Donald Trump. Actually, had a guy in the U.S. who was foiled by the DOJ, by the FBI. This move being made by Congress to secure chain of governance, continuity of governance, suggests to me, at the bare minimum, the sentiment we face. Our government fears that we are entering into a mass conflict scenario. Could be civil war, maybe, or World War III all at the same time. One thing that I think would be probable is that should World War III break out, you may not call a conflict in the U.S. a civil war. It may be partisan factions rising up, and maybe it's civil war, but I'll put it this way. If the U.S. gets involved in a massive international conflict, I don't believe we'll be invaded. I think it'd be insane. However, international enemy, like our enemies, our adversaries, will fund partisan groups in the U.S. to disrupt and disable U.S. capabilities. I don't know how we handle it. I think that's what Congress fears. But when you've got Congress saying mass casualty event, when you've got the DOJ saying an attempt on Trump's life, when we witness an attempt on Trump's life, when you've got the invasion of Russia, when you've got Iran's association firing rockets into Israel, Israel back at Iran, and then Lebanon and Israel bombarding each other, Israel then detonating these pagers. Ladies and gentlemen, we are on the brink, and the sentiment is clear. You can deny it, you can ignore it, and you can say, yeah, there's saber rattling here. We're not going to go to war there. But when our own government starts making these moves, you pay attention because they know things you do not. They've got access, some of them, to classified information. So when they start coming out being like, we need to prepare for when members of Congress are killed en masse, I have to wonder what gave them reason to think that was possible. Could it be the election? The Washington Post reports, imagine the unthinkable. A mass shooting of members of Congress that leaves a large swath of the country unrepresented and shifts the balance of political power in Washington. In the current political environment, such an outbreak of violence is not as unthinkable as it used to be. According to a bipartisan collection of House members, the attempted assassination of members at the congressional baseball team practice in 2017, the violent attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, a dramatic spike in threats against members, and most recently a possible second assassination attempt against Trump, I think it's fair to say it was, highlight the need for Congress to ensure it can continue to govern in the aftermath of mass violence, they said. I'm going to tell you guys what's worrying to me. We went recently to D.C. to do, it was during the debate, September 10th, so this is 2 weeks ago. We were in Washington, D.C. Members of Congress are just walking around. You know, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, Luke Rudkowski and I were walking around. Bernie Sanders is walking around. We went to a book event, Bernie Sanders just standing right there. And we're like, hey, Bernie, he's a senator, right? He's just a member of Congress. Last 2 weeks ago, when I was in D.C., we were parking, just saw Eric Swalwell just walking around. And I'm worried about these guys. You know, disagreements are one thing. We're allowed to disagree. I appreciate, you know what I love? I love that we can, as a nation, be like, that guy sucks. Look at him. He's so dumb. What I don't appreciate is that anyone would threaten or try to bring harm to these people who we don't like. We're all fighting this partisan battle, and it's a good thing that it's not extremism. It's not violence. The rhetoric's been getting crazy. I really wanted to roll down the window and yell, Swalwell, keep it up, keep it up. And, you know, power to you, buddy. Make him feel good for the day, you know? I don't like the guy, but I think I'm not going to open the window and yell at him insults or whatever. I'm just be like, hey, what up? It's Eric Swalwell. But I'm thinking about this because, you know, with what Matt Gaetz was saying, what other members of Congress were saying when we were talking about this show, I mean, these guys, They leave the Capitol complex or whatever, and they're just walking down the street with their briefcase, getting in their car. A lot of these guys, they make, what is it, $174,000 a year? A lot of these guys, they have to use that salary to pay for their house where they live in their district and somewhere to sleep when Congress is in session. So a lot of these people are sleeping in their congressional offices, and they're not supposed to, but they do anyway because they can't afford it. Don't get me wrong, a lot of these members are millionaires, but about half. And so I'm genuinely concerned for their safety. This country cannot, you got all the problems in the world Congress. They're dysfunctional. They can't do crap. The Republicans and Democrats, they both suck. There's a handful of people we like. But still, for all the concerns that we have about dysfunction, the level of violence that we are seeing in this escalation is substantially worse. What it leads to is worse than dysfunction. It would be violence and chaos. They say to address such a scenario, 4 House members, 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats are pushing an unlikely solution, a constitutional amendment that would allow members to be replaced quickly in the event of a mass casualty event. In addition to ensuring uninterrupted representation for constituents, the amendment would discourage attempts to use violence to sway the balance of power in the House. We've seen a 300% increase in threats against members over the last 7 years, according to the Capitol Police, said Rep. Derek Kilmer, a Democrat from Washington. In an environment where we have seen a growing tendency towards political violence, imagine horrifically a baseball practice where someone has bad intentions and better aim. You can literally flip a majority for 3 to 4 months, which I think is a frightening incentive for political violence. According to a survey of state election officials, states need between 3 and 4 months on average to hold a special election to replace a deceased House member. A function of the time it takes to print ballots, in addition to a federal law requiring ballots to be mailed to overseas and military voters at least 45 days ahead of the election. That's actually a really long time to have a vacancy if you're in the midst of a national crisis. Kilmer teamed up with Reps. Brad Wenstrup, a Republican from Ohio, William Timmons, Republican from South Carolina, and Emanuel Cleaver II, a Democrat from Missouri, to come up with a proposal to ensure that Congress can continue its work if a large number of members are killed in a mass attack. Their proposed constitutional amendment would require each member of the House to submit the names of at least 5 individuals from his or her political party to their state's governor in the event of that rep's death. The governor would choose a name from the list within 10 days, and the House Speaker would be required to see them immediately. I agree with this. I like it. Understand, when you get elected to Congress, the idea is this. You then choose 5 surrogates, effectively, that can serve in your stead should the unthinkable happen. 5 people that you trust as an individual. And so if the people are voting for you, they believe in you, I think it's fair to say that you have, vice congressmen or whatever on the sidelines. Should the worst happen, they can step in. Because also sometimes people get old and die. And I think that's actually fair. There are a lot of, and I don't think it benefits either party. If you're in a swing district and the Republican wins, the Republican goes and says, here's the 5 Republicans that I think can do this job should I not be able. 28th Amendment. Very interesting. The Continuity Amendment would also deny a would-be assassin the power to flip control of the House from one party to another. Kilmer said the interim appointee would serve only until a special election could take place. I actually think this is a good idea. The Constitution requires all House vacancies to be filled by election rather than with an interim appointment. It does not impose the same standard on the Senate, where states may choose to fill vacancies with a temporary appointment until a special election can take place. Enacting a constitutional amendment is difficult, requiring a 2/3 vote of both houses of Congress, as well as the ratification by 3/4 of state legislatures. The last ratification took place in 1992, when the 27th Amendment was adopted, requiring that any pay raise enacted by Congress for itself may not go into effect until after the next election. Congress should eliminate the incentive for an individual to commit political violence for the purpose of tipping the balance of power, Wenstrup argued at a committee and House Administration Subcommittee hearing on the measure Wednesday. A violent domestic terrorist attempt to assassinate Republican members of Congress, Wenstrup, who treated House Majority Whip Steve Scalise after he was shot, recalled to the shooting. He had names in his pocket, description in his pocket. It was a clear assassination attempt, and he decided to use murder or assassination as a tool for political change. He wanted to wipe out the Republican majority and change the balance of power. I would contend that's an insurrection by one person. They say 40 constitutional amendments have been introduced since 1945. None of them have passed. says Stephanie Bice of Oklahoma, the chairwoman on the subcommittee. Bice said the track record helped explain why in the wake of the terror attacks on September 11th, Congress opted instead to change federal law requiring a state to hold a special election within 49 days in the event of an extraordinary circumstance where vacancies in the House chamber exceed 100 seats. Now, the only reason I disagree with this a little bit is because my 28th Amendment is the right to keep and bear and breed chickens. Okay. That chickens being necessary for the security of a free state, the right to keep, bear, and breed chickens shall not be infringed. And you say, Tim, you are silly. You are a silly man. And I say, I'm only half kidding. What the actual point of my statement was, American citizens need the right to grow and secure their own food and resources to a certain degree. I suppose you can argue that it can fall into the Third Amendment's interpretations that it's interesting, the government can't quarter troops in your home has largely been interpreted to the government can't infringe upon your home for any reason. I believe it's actually important we enshrine the rights of individuals to be secure in their property to grow their own food, because there are many jurisdictions that say you can't grow vegetables, you can't grow food, you can't collect rainwater and things like this. And that means you are inhibited from being self-sufficient in the event of a catastrophe, which I think is insane. However, I'm being somewhat silly, I admit. I think it's interesting, and I think this, on the surface, seems like a good idea. They say, a Politico report on this story, one pistol clip can change the balance of power. Congress is wholly unprepared for a mass casualty event. And you know how I know they're unprepared? Because they said the phrase pistol clip. What? All right, for those who don't understand, a clip is when you, I actually, no, I don't have one of these. I have an M1A. And the Garand, I believe, uses a clip where you basically have, it's a metal frame, you snap the bullets in, and the whole clip moves through, and each bullet gets fired. A magazine, that's what I think they're referring to, is, in a pistol, a magazine. It's spring-loaded. You load the bullets into it, you load it in, and then the spring pushes the bullets up, and they get fed into the chamber. So considering they said the phrase clip, they have no idea what they're talking about. Heaven help these people. They need protection because they don't even understand. And who said this? Was it a Republican who said that? Who's quoted as saying that? I really want to know. It had to be. Here you go. Yep, it was a Democrat. Come on, man. Seriously? This is what makes people Democrats or Republicans, I guess. Did you Google it first? Well, my friends, I got to tell you. NBC News, election fears ignite preppers already planning for the catastrophic unknown. In the swing state of Michigan, people readying for disasters and end-of-world events are turning to Facebook groups, conventions, and each other to learn survival tactics. Are you prepared, my friends? I'm not kidding. I don't know to what degree you need to prep or whatever. You do you. I'm just saying. Do you know how to start a fire? Do you know how to make rope? And even the basics. Ask a question for you right now. What would you do if news broke that the highways were shut down? For just whatever the reason, I don't care. A tornado came and just did a big circle around your town and wiped out all the bridges. What are you going to eat? How long do you have? Where's your water coming from? When I grew up in Chicago, they said whenever there was a major storm to always make sure you fill up your bathtub. Because if the water lines get busted because of a major catastrophe, you will need that water, and it's good to have. They say in hurricanes, tornadoes, or whatever, in disasters, you want to fill up your tub to make sure you have that extra water because you need it to live. And it's funny because they say that a person uses like a gallon a day or more, and that's not. I think it might be like 2 to 8 gallons for everything a person might need to do. I don't know, whatever. But have you ever thought about this? Do you live in New York City? Some of you do. Do you live in an apartment building? Is there any grass near you? What are you going to eat? How much food do you have in your cabinet? When I lived in New York, there were bombings. And so I always kept 2 full cases of bottled water just in case of emergencies. Water is essential. It's the essential. What are you going to do? Let's talk about escalating conflict or crisis. Let's say that's with the election, we're looking at, I don't know, civil unrest, at the bare minimum. And then you get word, you say, guys, main highway into town, shut down. There's a bunch of groups shooting at each other. What do? You might just say, how long is it going to last? Let's say a week goes by And they're like, there's people positioned around this. Nobody knows who's who. The authorities have no resources to come out here. You know, when you live out in the middle of nowhere, it's a double-edged sword, I guess. There's like one main highway, and you need an off-road vehicle if you're going to go around it. If there's active gunfire, good luck. However, being in the middle of nowhere, you're more likely to have chickens and fresh fruit and wild fruit and vegetables and things like that. So, but that's the issue, I suppose. People live in cities. I think they're screwed. They're too dependent. NBC News says his home in a suburb of Flint, Michigan, is equipped with a generator. His cars are packed with first aid kits, light sources, and heat blankets. A collection of 3-ring binders has more than 800 pages worth of instructions for tasks ranging from how to make bread to skinning a rabbit. And in his basement, he's installed 4 freezers and is stockpiling water, canned goods, and ready-to-eat meals. Enough food, he estimates, to last his family 5.5 years. I'm ready for anything to transpire, whether it's an EMP going off, said Cat H67, an electromagnetic pulse, or World War III. It's been more than 15 years since his wife Karen piqued his interest in prepping, planning for natural disasters and worst-case scenarios with surplus supplies and a knowledge of survival skills. And Kedich contends a curiosity among newcomers has been surging. Canning is important. Jarring is important. We make jam out here. We got a bunch of various berries and fruits, and you can make jam with it. And if you freeze it, it can last you a couple of years. This is funny because city folk don't know this. But farm fresh chicken eggs, you don't got to refrigerate. I think you can leave farm fresh with the bloom intact, so they're airtight. I think you can leave out for about a month or so. You put them in the fridge; they're good for about 3 months. Or you can you put them in these jars with I think lime, and it's called glassing. And then the eggs actually last for a very, very long time. And they, it's not as good a year later if you pull them out, rinse them off or whatever and open it. They're not as good, but eggs are eggs and food is food, my friends. A private Facebook group he founded, Michigan Preppers, has nearly 18,000 members, up from 8,000 since the COVID pandemic. He attributes the growth to a feeling of turmoil during Joe Biden's term. It's funny how we know it's happening. We know people are freaking out under the Biden-Harris administration, and they're like, nobody's going to win again. Yeah, are all these people freaking out and stockpiling going to vote for Joe Biden? If Trump isn't elected, I'm thinking we're either looking at a military coup or we're looking at a second civil war. Wow. It won't happen right away, but it will take time to formulate. Provocative rhetoric from political candidates is tapping into the fears and anxiety. I don't recognize this country. I don't recognize this world, said Michael Clark, a Trump supporter who lives in a rural community of fewer than 1,000 people near Lake Michigan. People just want to prepare for their families and have control over their futures. Clark, 69, doesn't consider himself on the extreme end of prepping. His wife has a pressure canner she uses to preserve meats. At a prepping event in southern Michigan this month, known as the Great Lakes Emergency Preparedness Expo, Clark sold dietary supplements and beauty products containing colloidal silver and tiny silver particles in liquid, silly, which some believe can treat infection and disease, but which the FDA does not consider effective. Neither do I. Silver, my socks, I have these special socks. They're like fancy. I got an ad on Instagram and I bought them. They're like silver socks. There's like silver filament in them. So I wouldn't call them super expensive, but they're more expensive than regular socks. And the silver and kills, actually it might be copper. I don't know, but it's got metal in them, like a metal filament, kills bacteria. Reading a t-shirt reading Vote 2024, Clark said he took issue with Democratic nominee Kamala Harris accusing Trump in the debate of fear-mongering. According to Harris, Trump, the candidate, has said in this election, there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of the election is not to his liking. Trump mentioned a bloodbath for the country during a campaign rally in March in regard to the possibility that he's not reelected. But he also said while discussing a possible trade war, see, these people are evil. NBC News is doing this on purpose. Trump said the auto industry will face a bloodbath. It's a term of great economic distress. But he also said so while discussing a possible trade war with China over auto manufacturing. They phrased it that way, so it sounds like he said it twice. Scumbaggery. Their rhetoric is causing me to be shot at, Trump said on Fox News a day after an incident at a West Palm Beach, Florida golf course this month in which an armed suspect was arrested. A Secret Service agent engaged the suspect who never fired his weapon. The Michigan Prepper Expo in Imlay City, about an hour north of Detroit, is one of dozens held each year across the country where people can learn about growing seeds, filtering, and reusing rainwater, and how to protect themselves from an active shooter. The number of preppers in the U.S. is estimated to be more than 20 million people. My friends, you get it. Do you have a first aid guide or kit? Look at this. We got first aid bug out bags. They're small kits. We've got our principal kits for the work environment. Right now on your phone, download Survival Guide. Download 2. Why? I don't know. You might go on a hike one day and get lost in the woods. No kidding. This is the crazy thing. You're not insane. You're not a prepper if you decide to have a survival guide. You're smart. Let's say you go for a hike and you're walking. Let's say it's a 10-mile trip or whatever. You're in the woods. You're following the path. When you come to, an area where you can see the road going up to the right, but it looks like there's a desire path or some road to the left, and you decide, or not even paying attention, you accidentally walk down the wrong direction. It happens. Happens to a lot of people. They go on hikes and they get lost. You walk for a little bit, and it feels like you're on a path because you're following what looks like, there's just leaves in the ground. You walk for a little bit and you look around and you're like, wait a minute, this is not the path. It comes to a dead end. You're not really on a path. It just comes to an area where you're like, this does not look like a path. You turn around and I don't know which way I came from. Check your phone. You look on the GPS, congratulations. Your GPS is your first step. You might just go, there it is. I better turn around and walk the other way. Let's say that for whatever reason, your GPS ain't working. Pull up a survival guide. It's going to have basics. Did you get lost? Here's what you do. And you might find yourself with that one sentence you read, one sentence of knowledge. You go, and you walk right back to the path. But many people make big mistakes. I was reading about this. They say, if you're driving in your car and your car breaks down or whatever and you're lost, stay by the vehicle. If you're same thing with a boat, because helicopter flying overhead can see a car, hard to see a person. And so people wander away from their vehicles going to get help. And then they end up losing their lives. Crazy stories, man. But, for the most part, there's, one of the craziest things to me, really, is how one sentence can change the world, can change your world. I always bring this example up with sucking chest wounds. Many of you are familiar with this. When there is a puncture to your chest, which creates a cavity near your lungs, what happens when you try to breathe, the cavity is filling up. Your diaphragm is, your chest is expanding, your diaphragm is contracting or whatever. And so as your chest expands, it's going to pull in air to fill the vacuum. But if you have a hole, it can pull air into a cavity in your chest, which isn't putting air in your lungs. One sentence, plug the hole. They say put a credit card over it and hold it tight. That's it. Or, and they do this in TV shows too, you put a credit card over it, you tape it down to 3 sides. What happens is then when you inhale, the suction pulls the credit card to the chest so air can't get in, but the pressure from the air coming in normally pushes the excess air out. So it starts going pop, 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 pop. I've never done it. No, I've only ever seen it in TV shows. I've had first aid training people explain this to me. You just want to seal that wound. Now, here's why it's important. How many stories have you heard? Stories that I've heard where someone experienced a puncture wound to the chest and everyone around him didn't know. A story from when I was from my neighborhood in Chicago was this one guy that we knew got jumped. I don't know why. 3 guys beat him up. Bad. Put him in the hospital. 3 of his buddies came to the hospital and visited him. He was in the hospital. He was beaten so bad. One day, these 3 dudes saw one of the guys in question, and they ran up to him, chased him down, and started punching him up against a chain link fence. The guy was getting beat. And then one of the dudes pulled out a knife and went bop, bop in the guy's chest. The other 2 guys backed up like, dude, what did you do? Holy crap. The guy who took 2 to the chest was like, oh. The 3 guys who were beating him up, they were like, bro, are you okay? And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. And they were like, what the hell, man? The dude who was stabbed gets up, runs about a block or 2, and then just collapses, flops down dead. They said that he had the puncture into his lungs. He did not know. People don't understand. Nobody knew what had happened. And he ran off and just died. He could have lived. They just needed to. It's crazy, too, because if the guy who had gotten stabbed knew this and sealed up and held the puncture to his chest, he might have saved himself. So I'm not a medical doc. I'm not a doctor or anything like that. Talk to a medical professional about exactly how you're supposed to do it. That's the story I heard. The story gets crazier. Like the police came and questioned the guy in the hospital. Like, did you order a hit? And he was like, what? Like, dude, no. It was a fight and one guy went crazy. The important thing is when you read some of these guides and you actually take this stuff seriously, you might be like, I didn't know that. A simple piece of information, simple sentence can change everything. Don't do this. Do this. And then you're like, oh, wow. You watch a movie or a TV show and they say in the show, and then imagine without hearing those simple words, seal the wound. That's it. Seal the wound. Someone could live or die. So I can't tell you where we're headed, my friends. But you know, it is funny. MSN's got this slideshow. Could a second civil war actually happen? 24 photos. Disunited United States. Slideshow continues on the next slide. Something both sides can agree on: a national divorce, bullets in all gender bathrooms. The MSN's got a slideshow about how the country could devolve into civil war. That's wild, with ads in between. The former kingdom of Hawaii, the last frontier. Yo, this is wild. Well, we're going to wrap it up there, my friends. Smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with all of your friends. Tell them it's the best show. Everyone agrees. Really do appreciate your support. You can go to getcominghome.com to purchase, pre-order the new song. You got to have iTunes installed if you want to pre-order it. Song is dropping Friday. I think you guys will very much appreciate the song and the message. You can subscribe to Timcast Music on YouTube. So search for it. Check out the promo in the video section. And next segment will be coming up at 4 p.m. on this channel. Thank you all so much for hanging out. And we'll see you all then.